Someone like Valve, to come out with their own little Valve-powered piece, and kind of like what Alienware's done, a really compact little piece of hardware that is basically plug and play. I really see that as being something that is
and it does speak
contribution
to
history.
Yeah,
exactly. So the benefit of a platform then is that something like PlayStation 4, it's standardized, and you know that everyone with a PlayStation 4 has the exact same specs. So you can have the headset, and you can make a game for PlayStation 4 for the headset, and you know that everyone's going to have the same experience. Whereas the downside with PC and the Vive and Oculus is everyone's got a different OS system, a different amount of RAM, different that might not impact it as much as the different GPU, all of the different firmware and all that sort of stuff makes it quite touchy. And if you've got I've had it where I've updated my graphics GPU driver, and then none of the Vive stuff works, but Oculus works, and then it's like, oh my goodness. So you got to, and then Oculus has its own other things with its own runtime. So I think that's the benefit of in saying that I love Vive. I'd say PlayStation does kind of have a benefit in that regard, and they'll have peripherals, but I really do hope that they focus on VR as something that people should do solely and wholly, and not have one foot in and one foot out, and use this peripheral, the headset, as kind of an extra that they just throw in.
Well, that's a very good point. On the last little bit of fragmentation, it is interesting to see Sony's sort of uniformity when it comes to stuff like their new PS4. They're bringing out the PS4.5 or 4K, so now you might have fragmentation there. But moving on. When it comes to VR, another aspect of it is mobile technology. We're starting to see that come out. You have your Samsung Galaxies and with those sort of cheaper headsets. How much do you think mobile technology is going to play in VR's future? Do you think that might be the hook to bring regular people into this VR space?
It's a 50-50. I think the Gear VR is definitely going to get more people into VR, interested in VR. So Gear VR, as you know, Samsung, collaboration between Samsung and Oculus. They've created the mobile Gear VR headset, and then you just slot your phone in, whether it's an S6 ideally, or an S7 now as being released. The S7 was just this last month, being optimized to provide VR experiences for the mobile headset. The benefit being, I see it as, so that the other flip side of the coin is the Google Cardboard. So it's very cheap, kind of a rubbish experience, and there's a lot of brands that are there's a lot of companies that are branding it and then pushing it out there.
Sort of burner VR tech.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, it's gimmicky. To be honest, it's gimmicky. And the downside of what I'm worried about is that big companies will push this because they want to be seen as cool and hype it all up and be part of the VR revolution.
A sort of token force.
Yeah, and then say, I am part of this as well, me too, have a me too attitude rather than I am attitude. So Valve is, I am going to create VR and make it successful, rather than someone else, I won't name any names, but other companies who go, me too, I'd love to join in on this, and what's the cheapest option I can do? I don't want to spend heaps of money. Absolutely. And then you have the risk of creating a bad experience for the first time users. There's a lot of people, even tonight at the Brisbane VR Club Meetup, who haven't tried VR before, and so tonight will be their first time. They'll try Vive. I'm really happy.
That's me as well.
Yeah, you as well, right? I would rather that than you go out and try Google Cardboard and try it on your phone, and it's like all juddery and a terrible experience, and then you go discount the whole thing, and you go, well, it's probably not that good.
Yeah.
Or I now don't feel that good about VR.
So when it comes to VR, you say that it's a very gamer-centric force, but in order to bring it into general sort of use, do you think there are going to be some more non-game apps coming out?
Yes, totally.
Do you think that's going to play a very large part in sort of making VR marketable?
Totally. So I definitely see B2B as the first major markets that will emerge because of the cost of the hardware, specifically with the Vive and the PCs that you usually need to run with the Vive, the specs, the level of specs that are required to play something that's reasonably good. So the gaming industry is going to explore, but it'll be it'll be B2B, as in business to business. It'll be, you know, the KPMGs integrating with the game developers who create these experiences where financial institutions can then visualize straight away data in an XYZ axes, because you can't do that on a screen. It's okay, but it's not as immersive. So what happens when you can network a VR data visualization experience? You can have other analysts from across the world, some of the best in the world. Maybe you could have someone from Harvard drop in, and they could give a presentation in VR to your team in Australia for a fraction of the price, because you don't have to fly them over or that sort of thing. Then they can also kind of basically break down the information based on the XYZ axes, for example, data visualization in VR. The limit to pieces of paper is it's 2D. And on a screen, you kind of need everyone to hover around and look at it, and it's a bit awkward, do it on a projector maybe, but how do you do that where everyone's immersed and they're kind of actually feeling the data and understanding it on that sort of a level? Does that make sense? So in order to kind of comprehend and be able to digest the information, I feel like visualizing the information is one of the big industries that is going to be impacted by VR, and something where a B2B play is best. The other one is marketing. So if you were to set up something like a booth at a convention, you've got a 5x5 square space, usually 5x5 meters. You could have flyers and some nice TV screens and some lava lamps or something like that. Everyone does that now. It's just a bit boring and tiresome. In that space, you could set up a room scale VR experience. And you could take that person on a journey, and you could take them somewhere outside of those four walls. Imagine that.
That's not the first time that's been suggested. The virtual concert comes to mind.
Yes.
The idea of you don't need to go anywhere, you pay maybe a pay-per-view sort of thing, you put on your VR experience and you're in a front row seat. Or as you were showing the 360 video earlier, on the stage with your...
exactly. With your idol.
Yeah.
Or in sports, you could get... This is the thing, I was telling a gentleman who just showed up tonight, and he's doing some sports-related stuff in the industry with education as well. But I said specifically in sports, imagine the stadiums at the Broncos game. I'm not really interested in sport, but the fact that you can stick a 360 camera and live stream, eventually you'll be able to live stream it so well that you could stick a 360 camera around on the front row seats. You could sell the front row seat 1 million times for $1. That's $1 million seat.
That's fantastic.
How many people do you know would spend $1 million on one seat?
I might even get into sports.
Maybe you get into sports, you never know.
So the games industry, for lack of a better, it's been somewhat grim, especially in Queensland. We've lost our last AAA developer. I think we've only got indie and mid-level left. Do you think VR is going to sort of be a shot in the arm for these people? Do you think it's going to give them something more to work off? Or do you
hope so. That's what the Brisbane VR Club's here for. So we want to get we've got access to Vives. We've just as of today we reached our 7th Vive. So the goal is for us to supply support and education to the local developer community, but then also for enthusiasts as well. Because I don't think this is just a game-centered thing. And if you're a programmer, you don't have to be from the gaming industry. You could be from other industries. But same deal with you've got film producers in here as well, looking at how to tell a story in VR. So it's really the VR Club is more an inclusive environment to get everyone to come in, pollinate them with some ideas, and get them to take this technology and think about how it applies in the outside.
So a sort of creative think tank based on VR.
Exactly, and to speed up the process of innovation, to speed up the process of getting VR into the mass majority, because I feel like that's when it's going to do the most good.
Yeah, well, a problem with the games development here is that there's been legislation issues, there's been various issues in that sort of field. Do you think VR is going to come up against the same sort of hurdles?
I think definitely a very interesting conversation is around how do you rate a VR experience. So before you might have MA15 plus, but what happens if that same exact content is surrounding you, and instead of you've got like a horror experience, you watch enough YouTube videos and you'll see there's people who rip the headset off and they're still freaked out. Because it's a level of immersion where when someone approaches you in VR, you're telling yourself it's not real. You take it off, but subconsciously you're still feeling as if someone's rushing at you.
There's still the suspension of disbelief.
Exactly. So I think there's going to be a lot of interest around. I think there's going to be a lot of damaged people that come from VR, unfortunately. But I think, again, the reason why you get it out into the masses as fast as possible is to uncover pull the blankets off it, the technology, as quick as possible so that everyone can see it. So that you don't have these sort of things where a few people have the technology, they're playing with it, but they're probably doing some bad things that they shouldn't be doing with it. And it takes longer then for us to have a conversation around how do we actually use this technology, what are the rules and regulations, whatever, like that. I think it's on the government, but it's also on people like us to get it out there and start the conversation as quickly as possible, get access to the technology. Again, so rather than having just a few people who play with it, and then all of a sudden it just blows up and everyone's like, well, now you're training murderers in VR, let's shut down VR. Or the other one, 3D printing. Oh, we're gonna 3D print guns. No, it's not gonna happen. But it's very important that everyone gets access to the technology to figure that out early on.
That actually leads us pretty well into our next topic, mods. So you said that you think access to the technology is very important for its development. Would you say that there's a strong modding homebrew scene in Brisbane when it comes to VR? Do you think that's going to be a very important part to its lifespans?
Yes, I think that's my push right now, or the Brisbane VR Club's push right now, is to get people out of a consumer mindset and into a content creation mindset, and really learn about what they can bring to VR in terms of content and the platform. I think that what you were saying is the challenge. Say again. What was the question?
The question was how much do you think modding is really going to affect its lifespan of VR, and whether or not you think there's already a healthy scene for it now?
So, do you mean adjusting the hardware or configuring the hardware?
Like configuring hardware, getting custom apps out. I believe there was already the virtual desktop on Steam.
Yeah.
So
it's the kind of the hacker community, that's what you're referring to, right?
Yeah.
The hacker community is definitely that sort of community that breaks those barriers and breaks down, like gets their ideas out there and shows something like virtual desktop, which is an awesome app. It's commercialization though, the process of commercializing that work allows those developers to continue working in that industry. So what you find in the dev community is a lot of people kind of do games as a hobby project. My hope is that people can actually take what they learn here and somehow turn it into a small business and make a living off it so they can dedicate more time and keep building on top of it. But so modding I think is important in terms of that's what you need in order to stand out in the market and to create some sort of value. You need to create value. If you're not modding, if you're more like, I think Oculus is kind of against the modding side of things. They've packaged it and it's quite a gated walled garden, so to speak, in that they're not going to really give you the hardware just to tinker around with. It's not like Apple. No, it is like Apple. Sorry, it is like Apple. Android maybe is more like the Vive setup. So we're in talks with Vive and with Valve. And the head engineer who developed the Vive system, I've got a guy who is really great at coding, knows his stuff. He is talking to the head engineer who developed the Vive system and trying to figure out how to create more peripherals. So what if you could track your mug in VR and you could drink your coffee? What if you could track your table and your keyboard? Then you could work in VR.
Very interesting.
So the peripherals, using the sensors, and he's getting pretty close to creating sensors, and it's kind of basically I feel like Valve is more inclusive and more accepting of people who want to build on top of their system, whereas the Oculus is more of the walled off, like please don't touch this, just come here to play games kind of mindset. That's what I'm feeling so far.
Okay. So we've spoken about adding value onto the system and how it's mainly gamer-centric at its early adoption period. Have you seen much use of it outside of games though? Stuff like maybe architectural
visualization?
Yes.
Yes, architectural visualization is a big one. A lot in terms of home renovation, modeling what it could be and then showing the client and then choosing different colors, etc. Also selling real estate. So you've got a lot of people who are international investors and they come to Australia. A lot. The Chinese market is a big one. There's a lot of them who invest in properties, and so there has been. I've seen examples of I think it was realestate.com.au took some headsets over to China and sold real estate that way, because you could give them an experience and show them what they'll be buying before they don't have to go there. And again, pictures I feel lie in a certain regard. A bit of Photoshop here and there makes it not look as it makes it look bigger than it actually is, or fancier or cleaner than it actually is. So I think VR will definitely help with that. Other applications, entertainment, but in a sense, like Virgin have used the Gear VRs for long flights to America, to and from America, because it's a way of getting out of that claustrophobic little tube, right? It's like, I can't stand it. So I'm really seeing the benefits of VR there. Other applications, you've got health, so again, data visualization, training, 360 videos, OH&S, training for with 360 videos on how to perform a surgery, what it's like to actually be in the surgery room and feel the suspense and sweat a little bit.
They recently did that, didn't they? They
yes.
streamed a surgery via 360 video.
Yes, there was a gentleman who was working in the mines, and his wife was giving birth. And so he was on the other side of Australia, but he was able to experience live through a VR headset the birth of his child. So I don't know what classification that falls under, but it's an interesting
Human
application.
interest.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you very much for your time. This was very informative.
No problem.
And in recording. Thanks again.
No problem.